welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name's Chloe. I would absolutely love it if you did stick around, and if you're not new here, then you may be looking at my setup thinking, that looks different, that looks weird. I have done a little room switch around, move around, and I'm obsessed with it and I love it. So today's video, as you can tell by the title, is one that I have been meaning to film for so long now, and it is basically everything you need to know to become a visual merchandiser. So one of my most watched videos and most commented on videos still to this day is a day in the life at H&M as a VM. So I used to work at H&M and I filmed a little video, like a little TikTok slash, I put it on YouTube, and it has got so many views on TikTok and YouTube. So I thought that I would then film this video to give a little bit more context, because that was kind of just like a day in the life, and now this video is just going to be in more depth of like how you get into becoming a visual merchandiser, and kind of like what the role actually is and things like that. So I am going to obviously speak from my own personal experience. I have worked as a VM for 6 years at H&M, and I learned a lot obviously on the job. So I'm going to be talking to you guys about how I got into it and what I had to do and things like that. So I only worked in one retailer, so I haven't got experience across multiple, but I feel like it would be pretty similar everywhere. I don't actually currently work for H&M anymore or as a VM anymore. I did absolutely love it. I kind of took a switch. I still work in fashion, but I'm working in buying now, so I'm at like a head office, so it's all a bit different, but I honestly loved my time as a visual merchandiser and I'm very passionate about it. So I will film this video to give you guys as much info as possible, but obviously if I do miss anything out or you have any further questions, then you can leave them in the comments, or you can follow me on Instagram and then you can DM me and I will get back to you about any questions. But without further ado, let's get on into the video. Maybe grab yourself a little cup of coffee, tea, wine, whatever you feel like, because it might be long. I don't know, I can ramble. Hopefully I'm going to try and keep it quite quick and concise, but yeah, maybe just grab a drink anyway, just in case. So I thought I would first of all start with what the role of a visual merchandiser actually is. Going forward, I'm just going to call it a VM because it's easier. But for H&M specifically, which is obviously what I'm going to be talking about, this is kind of what it was. So when you're a VM at H&M, you are also a manager. So part of the role is to be a manager of the sales advisors that work there. You're not like heavily management, I wouldn't say, because you also do have the department managers who are like the line managers of the staff, but you are a general manager, so obviously you did managerial tasks. But the typical like day-to-day jobs of a VM is to change the mannequins. That's probably one of the main ones that everyone thinks about when you say you're a VM. They're like, oh, you dress mannequins, and it's like, yeah, that is one of the things I do. There's quite a lot else, but yeah, changing mannequins is obviously a big one. So around the store, in the windows, there's mannequins, so you change them. Most places you follow a plan from your support office, head office, and they'll send through a plan and you have to dress the mannequins in the outfits that they want. They're called Get the Looks at H&M, so we used to have to change our mannequins to fit the Get the Looks. And obviously along with doing the mannequins, we would then change the whole window schemes as well. These were not done every day. It was kind of like done on rotation. So like one week you would do the ladies one, then you would do a kids one, etc. It was all part of like a big store team planner that was done, which you would obviously follow. But a big one is obviously doing the windows, which is kind of a love-hate relationship for me. I love doing some, I hated doing others, but it is a big part of it. So obviously as well, when you are at VM, because you're doing stuff on the shop floor and you're doing stuff like in the windows, you are normally doing it before the store opens. So 6 till 3 or 7 till 4 were like my hours. They did obviously change depending on if I was needed to stay a bit later, or if I was doing the closing shift where you'd help cash up and everything like that. But yeah, mostly it was Monday to Friday, and then it was 6 till 3 or 7 till 4. So involved with the role as well, we did things called rematches. So that is when we changed around the whole of each department accordingly to our pages that we're given, and we would make them look nice and put them all in outfits, like wearable purchase suggestions. And that was the fun part, because we would go up into our stock room. It's something called sample picking, so we would sample pick one of everything, go up in the stock room, we'd like plan it out all on the walls and stuff, like kind of like a mock shop floor. We'd create that, and then we would band up the samples and put little sticky notes on them, and that was to show what we were then going to take to the shop floor and rematch it all. Like and I used to love doing that. It was so fun, and obviously you would see all the trends come together, and it was so cool, and I loved it. After a fresh rematch where everything had been sorted into size order and on the correct hangers and just like looking fresh and pretty, and it was so nice. And then as the weeks go on, things would dwindle down and then it wouldn't look as cute anymore. But after a fresh rematch, that is like the best. It was so satisfying, and that was a really fun part. So there are like the three main kind of parts of the job that I would say take up most of the time. But then there was also a lot more. In the visual role, you are responsible for how the shop floor looks, basically. So any dirt, any dust, you're responsible for it. So we were constantly cleaning all the lighting in the store. We were in charge of that. So if we wanted to move something, we'd have to move the light, and yeah, we would just be responsible for all the lights, all the cleanliness. Obviously we did have cleaners in the morning as well, but they wouldn't be allowed to touch like the mannequins or the windows or anything like that. So we would have to make sure that all of our windows and everything were clean and not dusty to represent the store and make it look nice. Because if you don't want to buy stuff if something's looking all dirty and dusty, because it's just not going to look as nice as it can. So all the equipment had to be really nice and like pristine. Any like scratches and stuff, we tried to like cover them up and paint them. So again, like in the windows, we would paint sometimes the walls, because when you're putting a scheme in the window, we only had these tiny little like walkways to get into the window. So sometimes you would scratch the walls if you're bringing in like a big scheme, like it would scratch the walls inevitably because it was kind of small in those windows. So then we'd have to like whip out the white paint and paint over any dirt and scratches in the window to make it just look so nice, because obviously we are just trying to make it look as good as it can and as inviting for the customer. Like everything we do, it's got the customer in mind. So, and obviously the brand, we don't want to do anything that would damage the brand or make it look bad. So everything that we did had to be like very pristine, and everything was clean and nice. We'd also be in charge of all the POS, which stands for point of sale. So any posters in the store, or like if it was a sale, we would put up like the sale posters and any offers and just any sort of signage around the store, or tickets, like price tickets. We were responsible for making them, along with the department managers as well. Like they would have to kind of cross-check that all the tickets were right, or if they wanted to move something, they would also change the tickets. So that was kind of like a mixed role. But anything that was typically like a poster of like a model shot or something like that, that would all be down to the VM to change. And then any like tickets, or if there are any offers on, then that's kind of more flexible between the VM and the DM. So there was a lot of obviously communication that had to be had in that respect. So that pretty much was like the main kind of role of being a VM. It depends obviously to each store, but that was kind of the main bulk, I would say, of being a VM. There's a lot of planning involved as well. We had to, like I mentioned earlier, we had something called a store team planner, so we would have to plan in the weeks ahead of time, just so that we know like when we're going to fit in doing each rematch. And if maybe one rematch had to be pushed a week later, we'd have to kind of plan all of that in and then let our area VM know that, because with H&M, they like all their stores to look the same at the same time. So if in, you know, maybe week like 1 to 5, that has to be a rematch that is done, and all the stores need to have the same window, same layout, etc. Obviously it differs a little bit. Some stores get different stock depending on the sizes of the stores, but yeah, so if you had to then delay a rematch, you'd have to let your head of VM know, because they would need to kind of be aware of that. And then after every rematch as well, we'd have to send in photos to our area VM, so they could put them in a little like weekly update, and they kind of put the best photos in that, and you always want it to be in that. So we had to try and make the best photos, the best lighting, everything just look really, really nice, obviously, before we opened. Along with all of those tasks, there were more like behind the scenes tasks as well, because we'd have to check the figures weekly to make sure that things were selling well, or if it wasn't selling well, kind of analyze why it wasn't selling well. Maybe it wasn't put in the best place when we did the rematch, so then we kind of move it the following rematch to give it a better chance of selling, and then just kind of analysing all the figures just to make sure that everything we were doing kind of made sense. You didn't want to put something somewhere and then it not sell and then keep it there forever, because it's never gonna sell. You need to kind of make sure that you're rotating it enough that everything has a good chance of being seen by the customer and selling, because we used to do these little maps where we'd kind of draw where the customer would go, the customer flow, and then obviously if we could see that there was a particular space where we had stock that the customer wasn't going, we would try and then put like maybe the odd bits there rather than like a new thing, because it's not going to be seen. So yeah, it was just a lot of analytical work as well, and just making sure that everything we did kind of made sense and was seen by the customer, and just making as much money as possible, because that is the role of the VM. You basically want to make the store look so inviting and so good that when every customer comes into that store, they leave with something. They are buying something, and the more they buy, the more money for the store, the better the store is, the more money goes into the store, the more money goes into you and your job and your development and progression and everything like that. So yeah. So yeah, they are the main points. There was a lot of ad hoc things obviously that did just happen, and there was other little bits that probably I did loads of and I've kind of forgotten now, because I haven't worked as a VM for about a year now. So yeah, there's probably a few things that I have forgotten, but they were like the main chunk of the jobs. But there were days where I was up on a ladder drilling things into the ceiling and stuff, so it wasn't like always a pretty job. I feel like everyone always thinks that it is, but it is a really tough job, to be honest, because there's days where you're literally lifting such heavy stuff. You're putting like these massive shelves up. Like, if you just think about all those kind of jobs, if you go into a shop and you see there's like shelves up and there's like, you know, or a massive window, like someone's obviously doing that, and that would be the VMs. And it was quite a tough job at times. Like, it would be very draining, like you're on your feet all day. Like I said, you're lifting these big shelves. There's been times we were up on ladders drilling into ceilings, painting. It was kind of just a mixture of like being a VM, but also you're a cleaner, you're a handyman, all of that kind of thing mixed into one. But no day was the same, and that is what I did really, really love about it. That in a nutshell is the VM role. I said this was going to be quick, but I've already been talking for 15 minutes. So yeah, let's move on. I'm now going to let you guys know about how I got into being a VM for H&M. And this obviously might be different for every single person out there, but I know H&M is especially good with progression. So I started at one store as a sales advisor. So I just got back from traveling. I was 18 and I got the job at H&M as a sales advisor, and I was full-time because I obviously, like I said, just got back from traveling, so I needed to make as much money as possible. So I started as a full-time sales assistant and worked my socks off. I was very like into it and I wanted it to be great, and I think that was what was seen by my manager, because I think she could kind of tell that I was very passionate about the role, about my work, and that I could be a bit bossy. So if people weren't doing what they're meant to be doing, I would be like, guys, like, come on. Which is probably, people probably hate that, because I wasn't a manager, so like people probably did not like me for that. But I feel like I did it in a way that was like okay. I don't know, maybe people were literally like, oh my god, she cares so much, like who does she think she is? But it worked out for me because I got promoted very fast. So I think just like, don't be afraid to kind of show that you are passionate about your job, even as a sales advisor, because you have to start somewhere. So I basically was a sales advisor. I was really good at it. I put a lot into it, and I think that was seen by my manager, but also I learned a lot about the visual merchandisers that worked in my store at the time, and I kind of got quite close with them, and I like asked them kind of about the role, and I was very like, I wouldn't say I was very like fashionable in the way of like I had all the new stuff and like was really hot on the trends, but I definitely had my own look, and I knew how to put outfits together, and I knew how, like, my fashion, my style back then is so different to what it is now, but at the time I think like it was very clear that I could put outfits together and that I had a good eye for detail and a good eye for like clothing and stuff. So I got close with the VMs, and they kind of taught me what they did, and I spent a day with them and just like kind of followed what they did. At the time, now this might have changed within H&M, but at the time when I worked there, to become a visual merchandiser you had to go and do an assessment day. So I basically had a day, so my manager put me forward for it. So I had to go to London head offices. The H&M head offices are in Regent Street, they're above the H&M store. So I went there for the day, and I basically had to do an assessment. So you're kind of watched the whole day. We were in a room like full of people, we kind of had to like mingle, and then went around the room and said like what our favourite clothing item is, and just introduce ourselves and things like that. And then we had to do little like team tasks, and then we had to present. So we had to prep a presentation and present that to people that were already VMs at other stores. So I basically had to, I think it was how does visual merchandising help with sales or something about like money basically. So I had to do a presentation for that, so I had to present that on the day, and then we had to go into like teams and present that. It was a lot, it was quite an intense day, I'm not gonna lie. I was so nervous for it, because I mean I'm not that confident now, but back then I was absolutely not confident at all. So to do something like that was really scary, and it pushed me out of my comfort zone a lot, but obviously I'm glad that I did that. So then obviously, like I said, my manager from that store moved to the other store, and a position came up, and she rang the store that I was at, asked for me to come for an interview, and then I went for the interview and I got the job. So I think the main thing there is just, if you're starting from the bottom as a sales advisor, just be passionate about the job and show that you're a hard worker, because again, like I said to you, it was a management role, so if you are a little bit bossy, kind of helps, because you then go into the VM role, which is a management role, and yeah, they know that you've got that bit of like snap to you and that you care. So again, everything you alright, Meeks? Just trying to get comfy. So that was my experience with becoming a VM. But also what I will say is that some people go to uni. You can go to uni and do a visual merchandising course, and then you can find a job that way. But I personally didn't go to uni at all, and I just learned on the job. And I don't think that one is better than the other. I think if you go to uni and you learn all these things, that is great, you've learnt it all, but then you've got to put it into practice. Whereas I didn't go to uni, so I might not have known all of the terminology and like all of that, but I knew about the customer, and I saw the stuff, and like I kind of learned on the job as I went. So like I said, neither is better than the other, they're just different. So a lot of my questions from the past video was about the interview process, and my interview I feel like was probably quite easy, because my manager at the time obviously saw me at the store and she kind of knew how I worked. So my interview was more like chatty. She asked me, you know, how I would be as a manager, I'm pretty sure, like my management style. She asked me where I got my fashion inspo from, and just a couple of questions like that, and if I was willing to, you know, like clean and iron and stuff. I forgot, yeah, one of the roles of the job is ironing, so everything we put on the manis we had to iron, but you would have seen that in my day in the life of the VM, so you guys knew that already, right? I'm just, the information's coming to me because I didn't write anything down. I thought, no, it'd be fine, I'll just waffle and I'm gonna forget stuff. So there might be a lot of pop-ups on the screen telling you more information because my brain is like a sieve. But yeah, my interview was a little bit more chilled out, I feel like, because like I said, my manager already saw what I could do, and when I was a sales advisor, she would give me tasks as well. She'd be like, oh, here's a VM page, like follow that and then show me what you've done. So like she already kind of knew the bits and bobs that I did back at this other store. So when I joined this store and had my interview, I feel like she was kind of just like, yeah, you've got the job. So got the job, and then I started my VM role and I was super over the moon about it. But I do know that some interviews are obviously harder. Like I said, I did have that big assessment day, so that kind of counts, but I'm not sure that they do that anymore, so the interviews might be a little bit harder. But I think personally what I would prep now, say I was about to go for a VM interview tomorrow, knowing what I know now, the things I would prep are, I would talk about fashion a lot. Obviously the whole point of the role is that you're a fashionable queen. I do kind of think with VM you either have it or you don't in a way, and I don't mean that in a rude way, but I think like with VM, if you know that you don't like ironing, you don't like cleaning, you don't like putting outfits together, or you have no idea how, then the role probably is not for you, because the whole role is about fashion and putting outfits together. That is kind of like the whole point of it. And if you can't really do that, or you don't feel like you have that creativity, then you might not get on well with the role, and there are other roles that you would thrive at. So like a department manager, they're a lot more managerial slash like money slash admin-y role. There's like operations managers, there's all these kind of other things. I think VM is definitely for the creative. So if you're not really a creative person, then it's probably not the role to go down. And also I feel like you just have to be hardworking, because it is such a tough job, not gonna lie. And also you have to deal with people's opinions, because you'll do something and somebody will like it and somebody won't. It's a subjective role. There's no right or wrong answer, it's just preference. When you go into your interview, I would definitely talk about creativity, passion for fashion, as cringy as it sounds, but say where you get your inspo from, say the designers that are your favourite, say the newest trend that you're obsessed with. I would also obviously talk about how hardworking you are, and that you can stick to deadlines, because it's constantly deadlines as a VM, so you can stick to a deadline. You can analyse data, or even if you don't really know much about like figures and stuff, that you're willing to learn that. Obviously it's a managerial role, so maybe you could talk about any previous experience that you've got as a manager, or if you haven't, then you could talk about how you would then go into that and what your management style is. Talk about any situations that have happened that have been quite tough and you've had to think on the spot, because being a VM, it's a very kind of like quick think what to do, solution, problem solving is what I'm trying to say. It's a very like solution driven problem solving role, because things don't always go to plan. Like you could be putting in a window and you realize that you've not got the main thing that you need to create this window, and like I said to you earlier, that all the H&M stores have to look the same. So if you haven't got that part of the window that you need, you have to think fast and kind of think, what can I do to make it look as similar to the window that it should be when I haven't got the main thing. So just kind of big yourself up if you're good at problem solving, thinking fast, using your initiative. Yeah, just show your personality as well, because I feel like there's nothing worse in an interview where you feel like you've come out of it and like you might have said all the right things, but if you've just sat there like, yeah, I can do this, and like you've not shown your personality, then I feel like that doesn't really, that kind of like doesn't make you stand out. I think definitely like be yourself. And if perhaps you're not ready for the VM role at the time of your interview, then maybe you could start how I started, and you can ask if there's any sales advisor positions going, and maybe start as that. And then once you like know a little bit more about the VM role and about the store and about the brand, then obviously you can work your way up like how I did. But another thing for the interview is obviously, like with any interview, just talk about the brand, what you love about the brand, any of their like brand ethics that you really like and that kind of sit close to your heart, like sustainability or whatever. But yeah, I think just be as prepared as you can, but like don't worry too much, just show passion. I think that's like the main sort of thing. But that is basically my experience of becoming a VM and what my VM role entailed, and I've kind of covered it quickly in a nutshell. Obviously there was a lot more to the role and I probably have forgotten loads of things. I could maybe do a part 2 of this if there's anything else that you guys want to know, like if I do get quite a specific amount of questions that I feel like I can answer in another video, or I could maybe do like a Q&A. If you follow me on Instagram, I can maybe put up one of them little Q&A boxes, and then you can ask me questions in that, and I could do a whole video on like your VM questions. That could be quite a good idea, but let me know if that's kind of like the thing that you'd want to see. Yeah, that was everything in a nutshell. And if you haven't already gone and watched the day in the life of a VM, then definitely go over and watch that, because it kind of gives a little bit more context to a day in the life. Like I said, that's, you know, does what it says on the tin. I will link it in like a little card up here and in the description box as well. So go and check that out, and I hope this answered a few questions, or just gave you a little bit more context into what being a VM is and the VM role. But like I said, any questions, let me know. So thanks so much for watching this video. I really do hope that you have enjoyed it, and yeah, VM for the win, hey? People have asked me about salary as well, and now that I don't work there, I can maybe talk about it, but I don't know. That could be a good Q&A box question. So yeah, anyway, I'm going to stop rambling now, because what the heck. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, evening, morning, whatever it is, and I will see you in my next video, guys. Bye!